Well, UK leaders are in a final push for votes ahead of elections. The clock is ticking fast in a countdown to Thursday's December 12th. Let's feel the heartbeat of Londoners with Juliana on board. Good morning, Juliana. Well, how tense is the atmosphere in a countdown to the long-awaited elections?
Good morning, Chimmy. Well, it's pretty tense here in the UK. I think you do get a sense that something's happening. Of course, we've been in a political paralysis for about 3.5 years. We've lost two prime ministers, David Cameron and Theresa May, since the referendum in 2016. But it does feel now that we are in the last 24 hours that anything could potentially happen. Of course, Boris Johnson, the prime minister, the leader of the Conservatives, he has had quite a wide lead in the polls over the past 6 weeks, but it's certainly narrowing. There was a last snap poll last night by YouGov being the most reputable polling group in the UK of about 100,000 people, and it still does have Boris Johnson getting a majority, but that majority doesn't necessarily mean he will have a working majority. There could potentially be a hung parliament, so both party leaders, Jeremy Corbyn, the leader of the opposition, and Boris Johnson will be crisscrossing across the country today, trying to persuade those last-minute voters, those undecided voters, and there are still plenty of them. Of course, there is still the threat of Joe Swinson, the Liberal Democrats. This week, you have had very big companies, organisations, thought leaders, including The Economist, putting their efforts and their opinion behind the Liberal Democrats because they're scared of a hard Brexit from Boris Johnson. And then, of course, they're scared of a very leftist socialist Britain, which you would get with Jeremy Corbyn. So to be honest, Chimmy, it is tense and there still is all to play for in these next coming hours.
I just can't imagine. Well, a foreign exchange currency strategist says he won't sleep for over 24 hours on election night. He says his job is to make sure his clients, big corporations, fund managers, and private banks make money no matter which way the pound swings when the election polls come in. Now, it's less than 24 hours to the elections. Is the pound doing okay this morning? Also lead us into the equities market.
The pound is doing well. The pound is, riding on that 7-month high. I think at the moment a pound can get you about $1.32, which is absolutely fantastic. Of course, when Theresa May left, the pound wasn't happy. And that's what we're seeing with this whole Brexit paralysis. Before we were in this Brexit situation, the pound really reacted to domestic policies. But it's all been about Brexit over the past couple of months. And once Boris Johnson was clear that he could get a deal, a potential deal with the European Union, it seems as if the city are happy with that deal, and they're more happy with Boris Johnson getting back into number 10 than they would with Jeremy Corbyn. Jeremy Corbyn is, pretty much feared in the city. He's seen as anti-business. He's seen as somebody that wants to nationalise. Well, he said it. He wants to part nationalise some of Britain's biggest industries. So every time Boris Johnson seems to be leading in the polls, the markets are happy, particularly the pound. At the moment, the equities market, the FTSE All-Share, opened about 30 points higher. So it's pretty much a wait and see. But as soon as those exit polls are released on Thursday evening, local time, 10 p.m., we will see a reaction, especially in the US, where markets will just be closing, and of course in Asia, where markets will be opening.
All right, let's go to the corporate world. The world's biggest share sale gets underway today as Saudi Aramco makes its stock market debut in Riyadh. Are investors in the UK also looking at that, irrespective of the election fever?
Well, yes and no. Of course, Saudi Aramco, the fact that, they are now the world's biggest listed company at $1.5 trillion, higher than China's Alibaba, higher than America's Apple, is a big sign. Everybody's watching and waiting, but it has kind of gone a little bit flat. Of course, the Saudis had hoped that they would not just be listing for local investors. They wanted this listing to be a global, international listing, but foreign investors kind of bailed out at the last minute. In September, we had that massive drone attack, which knocked out 50% of Aramco's output. Also, as well, there are some human rights issues. We know that Riyadh and the Saudi government are very closely linked with Saudi Aramco, and a lot of people are not so comfortable with that. Also, as well, climate change. Climate change has been one of the biggest buzzwords and biggest geopolitical terms of the year. Oil is a very dirty business. Although they're making a lot of money, a lot of big investors are really trying to diversify and push themselves away from that. So, of course, it's made global news because it's a big story and it's record breaking. But, you know, the Saudis and the rest of the international community is still very cautious when it comes to diplomatic relationships.
And are there corporates to watch today?
There is some corporate news. Of course, the US Fed Reserve, they'll be deciding on their interest rates, which will certainly affect markets because the dollar is still very valuable currency. And also as well, Saatchi, one of the Saatchi brothers, let me make sure I get his name right, Lord Morris Saatchi. He's announced that he'll be stepping down from Saatchi & Saatchi, which is that big-time international advertising agency. Just last week, they announced that they had a massive accounting error to the tune of about £8 million. They've got to get PwC to come in and have a better look at their books, and that sent their shares plummeting. Also, as well, a lot of people are not sure about whether or not they can trust the current execs in the company. So he bailed out. So I'm sure at intraday that may affect their stocks. But all eyes in the UK are on the upcoming election, Chime.
Right, Juliana. Well, I'm sure we would like to get more updates on that when you will be talking with BC later in the day. Enjoy your day.